8 hidden World War II food storage spots soldiers never think to search. If you're serious about wartime history and survival logistics, well, this episode is for you. Before we go any further, do subscribe to the channel, comment with your favourite overlooked World War II survival detail, and share this video with someone who studies conflict history as deeply as you do. This channel exists to preserve the practical knowledge of war, not the watered-down versions. What you're about to hear is rarely discussed, even in serious documentaries. Wars are won as much by calories as by bullets. During World War II, armies on every front learned very quickly that visible food stores were the first things stripped by advancing troops, retreating units, refugees and scavengers. What survived were the supplies hidden in places soldiers were trained not to search, locations that violated assumptions about cleanliness, value or logic. These weren't accidents. They were deliberate systems built by people who understood how soldiers think under pressure. Today we're breaking down 8 of those hidden food storage locations, why they worked, and how the same principles can be applied in modern survival planning. Why most soldiers searched the wrong places during World War II. Soldiers were trained to search kitchens, pantries, barns, wagons and cellars first. They looked for sacks, crates, barrels and anything that looked like it might contain food. What they did not search were spaces that appeared structurally useless, unsanitary, dangerous or emotionally off-limits. This predictable behaviour created blind spots that civilians, resistance networks and even quartermasters exploited. Understanding these blind spots is the key lesson here. Grave-adjacent soil caches were avoided out of instinct, not logic. Across Eastern Europe and parts of France, food was buried deliberately near fresh graves or old cemeteries. Soldiers rarely disturbed burial grounds unless ordered, both out of superstition and fear of disease. Families would seal dried grains, beans or flour inside waxed cloth, metal tins or sealed glass, then bury them just beyond headstones or under grave-edge stones. The practical application today is simple. Humans avoid spaces associated with death. In a modern survival scenario, storing supplies near locations people instinctively avoid still works, provided containers are moisture-proof and clearly mapped for retrieval. False structural beams and hollow load-bearing timbers, well, they hid calories in plain sight. Barns, attics and farmhouses were routinely searched. But, soldiers almost never dismantled major structural elements unless they were conducting demolitions. Resistance groups, quite cleverly, hollowed out beams, roof supports and even stair stringers, sliding dried meat, grain tubes or ration bricks inside. Access points were, of course, concealed with wooden plugs stained to match. For modern use, this really translates directly into hiding supplies inside functional structures that would require tools and time to dismantle. Something most searchers simply won't commit to unless, well, they're desperate. Animal feed bins were, honestly, trusted too much to be questioned. Soldiers assumed animal feed was exactly that, just feed. During the Second World War, civilians often layered edible grain beneath foul-smelling chaff, husks, or even spoiled feed. The smell alone was enough to discourage inspection. In some cases, clean food was stored in sealed containers at the bottom of feed troughs or silos. Today, the lesson is really about camouflage through context. Storing usable resources beneath unpleasant or low-value materials dramatically reduces the chance of discovery, as long as, of course, separation prevents contamination. Collapsed rubble piles, well, they concealed deliberate food vaults. Bombed-out buildings weren't always accidental ruins. In cities like Warsaw and Stalingrad, civilians created controlled collapses that buried sealed food caches under brick and concrete. Soldiers avoided rubble unless they were searching for snipers or weapons. These caches often used ceramic crocks or pressure-sealed tins to prevent moisture infiltration. The modern application really is understanding that chaotic environments discourage thorough searches. A controlled mess, designed to look accidental, can actually be an effective concealment strategy when paired with durable containers. Latrine-adjacent hiding spots, well, they really exploited the deep-seated fear of disease. One of the most effective hiding locations, believe it or not, was near or just beneath latrines. Now, food was never placed directly inside waste, of course, but sealed containers were buried nearby, often just beyond the edge of the pit. Soldiers would avoid these areas unless it was absolutely necessary. Civilians, meanwhile, marked access points in subtle ways, such as a particular stone, or perhaps a certain fence post. In modern terms, this all demonstrates how perceived health risks, truly shape behaviour. Supplies hidden near unpleasant infrastructure tend to be much safer than those tucked away in so-called logical storage areas. Waterlogged ground, interestingly enough, was actually used intentionally, not avoided. Marshes, irrigation ditches, and those flood-prone fields were used to store food sealed up in pitch-lined barrels or rubberized bags. Soldiers usually assumed anything submerged was completely ruined. In reality, though, many of these caches remained perfectly usable for months. Retrieval, of course, required precise knowledge of both location and timing. The modern lesson here is that environments considered destructive can, in fact, be quite protective, if the materials are chosen correctly. Waterproofing and strict discipline about location, those are the deciding factors. Church and school maintenance spaces were, more often than not, rarely searched thoroughly. While churches and schools were certainly searched for people and weapons, maintenance voids, like bell tower crawl spaces, boiler cavities and false flooring, were frequently overlooked. Civilians stored preserved food in these spaces, knowing full well that soldiers hesitated to damage public or religious infrastructure unless they had explicit orders. Today, this really reinforces the principle that socially protected spaces tend to receive lighter inspection, especially if accessing them requires a bit of specialized knowledge. Personal items disguised as, worthless clutter often concealed emergency rations. Perhaps the most overlooked tactic was hiding food inside objects no one wanted to touch. Rotten suitcases, broken furniture, children's toys, or even mouldy books often concealed dried food wrapped in wax paper. Soldiers, you see, focused on speed and value, not clutter. The takeaway is quite clear. Items that signal low worth or inconvenience are actually powerful concealment tools when combined with careful internal organization. Food storage during the Second World War was not really about clever hiding. It was about understanding human behavior under stress. Soldiers were hungry, tired, ordered to move fast, and trained to prioritize certain targets. The people who survived learned to store food where logic said it didn't belong. That lesson, honestly, hasn't changed. If you found value in this breakdown, do consider subscribing to the channel, share this episode with fellow historians and survivalists, and leave a comment with a lesser-known Second World War logistics detail you think deserves attention. This channel exists to preserve hard-earned knowledge, and your support truly keeps it alive. After the sirens.